Hello everyone, so today I've decided to make a video, and this one is going to be about IP addresses and how to troubleshoot a couple of issues which are the most common and the reason why we often need to help out clients. So I'm going to run over three of the most common problems and how you can solve them yourself. So I'm going to assume for this video that you've already read the SCMB configuration manual, you've followed the steps, you've set up your local area network, and you've tried to set it up, but it's still not working. So that's the base point for this. So as you can see, I'm just going to see what my IP address is for reference so that you also know what I'm talking about. So inside my network, let's look at this. So I'm going to make a note of this. This is my IP address. It's 116. As you know, IP addresses are we could call them the name of the device. It's the identifier of the device on a local area network, which is what we need to configure to set up our equipment. You know, Ethernet is a brilliant system. It's much more reliable than USB, but it does need a small configuration, which is, again, what we're going to be looking at today. So we've got that. We know that my IP address is 116. So, and the example of this video is going to be for an aft overhead. So let's imagine that I've bought an aft overhead and I'm trying to put that into my internet browser. The default IP address for the aft overhead is 155. So I'm typing that in and nothing's happened. By the way, if you didn't know what the default IP address is, there's a table. So I've got the tables here. Oh, I'll just fill that in for you. 168. This is a personal document. It's just an idea for you to have as well. You can have your IP address just so we don't get confused. In this table, I've got the default IP addresses of each of the Plug&Fly modules. Now this is the ones we assign to them when they leave the factory. So it should be this one here. So that's why I typed that number into my internet browser, which is Chrome, but you can use any one. So it should be 155, but nothing's happening. Okay, this is obviously a problem. So there's three things that could be happening here. Number one, please don't overlook this because it happens more often than you would think. Connect the cables, make sure that the Ethernet cable is connected as well as the correct power supplies. That's number one. Happens all the time, as I'm saying. Okay, problem number two, IP addresses. There's a number of them on your local area network, so it could be, depending on what you have installed on your network, it could be your printer, it could be another computer, it could be your fridge, or any intelligent device that you've got connected to your local area network, and they all use an IP address. So if another device is using the same IP address as this one, then we have a problem. There's a conflict, and we need to get rid of that. The other problem which could happen is that for when you're doing the configuration, you or somebody else, you've changed the IP address from the default 155 to, for example, I don't know, 220. So you've changed the IP address and you can't remember what the new one is, and now you can't find the configuration page. So that's, again, quite a common problem. So for problems 2 and 3, that is, forgotten the name and there's a conflict between IP addresses, the solution is the same. And what we're going to need to do is to download a network scanning software, which I've got here already. We use NetScan, which is a free app, but you can use any others if you prefer to do some research and find a different one. That's absolutely fine. So I've got it pre-configured here. You might need to write in the values you want to search in. Now I'm searching from 192.168.1.1.2 all the way to 255, which is the maximum in this range. This number here, the 1 is the range. Please make sure that that is also 1. It must stay 1 because if you're in a different range, you won't recognize the IP address. So what this tool will let us do is see all the different IP addresses on this network. So it's going to take a while to load. We've got some computers here, which is on our local network. Loads of IP addresses. Okay, so I'm looking for my Plug&Fly modules, remember, so I can look at my table. These are the IP addresses it should be. Imagine if you have an aft overhead, a main instrument panel, a pedestal. You're looking for those, and we don't have them. They're not here. So what we need to do is to test one by one each of these IP addresses in in your internet browser. So let's start with this one. I'm not going to do these because I can see what they are. Desktop, desktop, desktop. It's none of those. It's not this one. I'm going to start here. So 168.105. Okay, so this is my printer. So that's fine. I'm not going to change that. I don't need to do anything. I'll go to the next number. 157. Again, I'm not going to do these because those two are desktops. Okay, this is the config page. So now I'm in a config page, but since I've changed the IP address, I don't know what this module is anymore. I don't know. This could be my aft, it could be my main instrument panel, or my MEEP, or we call it MEEP. So we're going to have to figure that out. Before we get into that, which I'll get into very briefly, I want to test the other ones too, just to see. So there's 166. You see, now we have another one. There's another config page, and I don't know which is which. This one is called 0140. This number in red is the name of the SCMB. SCMB is the electronic card, and that's the code which identifies it. So this, and it's unique to every module, so it will help you to identify which is which. Okay, so before I get into discovering which module it is so we can configure it correctly, let's see what you could do if you've tried all of these, because let's say you try all of these numbers and none of them are for the config page. So you don't see this, you just see an error. You see error page. What can you do? There's two things you can do. Let me open my document. The first would be to open the module, if it's a Plug&Fly module, and locate this button here. This is a reset button on the image. It's now maybe yellow. Hold that for 10 seconds. That will reset the IP address of this card to that's the default IP address of the SCMB. And from there, you'll be able to type this number into your internet browser and then configure it to whichever, to the aft, to the MEEP, to the forward overhead, whichever one you're using. So that's one option. And the other option is to literally turn off or disconnect every device which you have on your network. So it would be to disconnect all the desktops, disconnect the printer, etc., and only leave on the module which you want to connect. So only leave on the aft, because maybe here there's two devices using number 166. It's possible, and in which case, whichever is predominant will not let the other one be seen. So if you turn everything else off, maybe a new IP address will appear, and then you'll be able to see the config page. So that's a possibility. But, well, it's possible. In any case, I hope that was clear. At this point, I'm going to assume that you've managed to find your way to the config page, to here. So as you can see, I've got two at the moment, and let's imagine I don't know which one is which. What am I going to do? So if you only have one module, then there's no problem, because you just reconfigure it. Say you have an aft overhead, you reconfigure it to 155, and that's it, you're finished. But if you have, let's say, the main instrument panel and an AFT module, then you're going to have to run a test. So let's try and see if it's the main instrument panel. So what we would do in that case, consult this document again, if you need to. So the main instrument panel is number 152. So I'm going to configure this SCMB as if it were a main instrument panel. So I'm going to do that and reload. As you see, it's the same number. We've now changed the IP address on this. So from here, I'm going to open SC Pascal. I had it open on a different window. I'm going to type in the host port for, oh, I need to change it here to the main instrument panel, excuse me. Do that again. Reopen SC Pascal. Excuse me, perhaps I need to put in my IP, my local IP address, the IP address of this computer, which is 116. Hopefully that's done it. For the purposes of this test, I'm going to put everything on. Although once you know which Plug&Fly module it is, you can always change that back. Okay, let's try again. Let's hope this time. Yeah, here we are, we've got it. So yeah, I've activated all the daughter boards so we can now see it. So the easiest test to check is we'll just press all on, and then we physically go and look at the main instrument panel for this, and we have to ask, are the outputs on? Is anything happening? We test this, is anything happening? If the answer is yes, that means you've found the main instrument panel. Yeah? If the answer is no, nothing's happening, then this is not the main instrument panel. In this case, it's actually not, so I'm going to have to return and do everything again. So for the sake of this example, let's go and do that. So the other option, the other panel I have is actually an aft overhead. So that's 155. I'm going to put that there. I don't know if it's going to let me do that now, hopefully. Maybe I was a bit impatient, I'm not sure. So I was trying to configure it as an aft overhead. This is a good example because it's not loading. I've attempted this again to see if there's any overlap. I can see here that it seems like I've correctly changed the IP address to 155. I'm not sure why that's not working right now. There we go. Maybe it just needed some time. Okay. So this is the IP address of my computer. That's correct. This is not correct. I'm going to have to change that to 155. I was too impatient. And once that's done, I'm going to move into SC Pascal. Change the port. Refresh the boards. And again, run the same test. Now this should have activated all the outputs on the aft overhead, and in fact you can't see it, but yes, it has. That's exactly what it's done. So, since this has correctly activated all the outputs on the aft overhead, I can conclude that this 0904 is the SCMB card which controls the aft overhead. I don't know why that happened. So what I'm going to do, once I've discovered which one it is, I'm going to open this document which I've made myself. I'm going to add a new column, and under aft overhead, I'm just going to write the name of it, which is not loading for some reason. Oh, 0904. I got the wrong number. I'm not sure why it's not connecting immediately. It should connect immediately. In any case, now it's working correctly. This would be correctly configured. So now I know that this is my aft overhead. If I only have an aft and a main instrument panel, I know this one must be my main instrument panel, correct? So right next to main instrument panel, I just write that. And now I know for future reference, if I ever change the IP address again, I can immediately know which one is which. Okay, so that's more or less what I wanted to show you during this quick video. Hopefully I didn't drone on for too long, and I've answered some of your questions. Let me know your comments if you have any questions, and of course if you have any suggestions for any other videos that you'd like to understand a little bit more, let me know. I'll get on that. Thank you very much for listening, and of course if you still have problems, please get in touch with us. Thank you very much, and goodbye.